Hi, I'm Alexa, and a couple of videos back, or several videos back, I did introduction to the Constitution. Let's learn it together or review it together or something. And in that, I basically predominantly went over Articles 1 through 3 of the Constitution. And even going over that video was about 20 something minutes long, and even just that wasn't enough to go over every single thing that those first three articles say. Those first three articles cover establishing the legislative, the executive, and the judicial branches of our federal government. So you can imagine there's quite a lot of information there. It literally outlines how each state gets, how many representatives they get, how to determine that, how to set up the Congress, what needs to be voted on in both houses, all of those. It sets up everything. Not everything, but it sets up a whole lot of stuff. There are another 4 articles as part of the Constitution itself. So this video is going to go through Articles 4 through 7. So Article 4 is quite beefy. It is 4 sections. And basically, I did look this up and get some sort of insight onto each of these to make sure I was reading these correctly. But essentially, each state is going to be governed and agrees to be governed by the supreme law of the land, aka the Constitution, and the federal laws, and that they will follow those and they will recognize those laws because they all are following the same laws. They'll recognize the laws of each other, kind of thing. And I'm definitely generalizing on these. So if you want more information, definitely Google it. There's wonderful sites out there. There's one, I think it's like constitution.gov or something. I'll drop the link as always in the thing. And it will explain it in way more in depth than I'm doing tonight. So Section 2, the citizens of each state shall be entitled to all privileges and immunities of citizens in the several states. So this means that we are able to move freely between each of the states. We have the same rights, privileges, immunities, right? Wherever we are, if we're in the United States, we are free. We have all the same rights. We have all the same things that we can go through. It does go on to establish that if you are charged in any state, and it says with treason, felony, or other crime, and like you flee from justice, that it does establish the extradition, that the state where you flee to, once they're petitioned, they will basically have to send you back, and they can't not let you go back. There is a section in here that basically says that, slaves, like if a slave from a slave state goes to a free state, the free state has to return them. So that is one of those dark parts of the Constitution that people don't really like to talk about, I don't think, that our founding fathers, several of them owned slaves, and it is not a pretty thing. It is not a comfortable thing. It is not a thing that we can ignore. It is something that was a fact at the time. It doesn't mean we agree with it. It doesn't mean that we cannot change. In fact, that specific paragraph was overturned by the 13th Amendment, and my amendment videos, I don't know how many I have of those at this point. We will have gone over the 13th Amendment in one of those, so I'll definitely link it, probably up top here somewhere. The third section is talking about how states may be admitted into the United States. And so obviously we started off with 13 states and we now have 50. And in more recent years, there is talk about Puerto Rico becoming the 51st state. I feel like there was another U.S. territory that had potentially been asking about being a state, but I don't remember exactly what it was. It sets it up that no state may be formed within another state. So, for example, if a section of, I don't know, Idaho, wherever, right, wanted to become its own state, you can't create a state within another state. So not entirely sure how that would happen if one state decided to split in two, and then one stayed the name of the state, but the other wasn't. How would that hurt? How would that work? But I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure that that will happen. So I think it was probably more of an issue when there were more territories versus states left in the. There was a whole western side of the United States, what we call the United States now, that wasn't states and territories and things like that. But anyway, it sets up how to approve a new state joining the Union. And then Section 4, basically, the United States shall guarantee to every state in this union a republican form of government and shall protect each of them against invasion and, on application of the legislature or of the executive, against domestic violence. So basically, this is setting up that every single state must have a representative government, so modeled after our federal government, and that the federal government, as long as the states are abiding by the laws, the federal government can act on their behalf to protect them, to protect all of their interests, and to make sure everything is going well. But that one, I was very interested when I was looking this up earlier to make sure I was understanding these correctly. That one actually was written very specifically to make sure that no state could be admitted if it had a king or a type of monarchy in place as the ruling ship. They all have to have a they call it a republican form of government in here, but they have to have a government similar to the federal government. So all right, Article 5, let's go on with this one. This one is all about how to add amendments to this Constitution. So basically 2/3 of both houses shall deem it appropriate or necessary. They can propose amendments or application of the legislatures of 2/3 of several states shall call for a convention. So basically, the Congress and Senate, they can propose an amendment, and as long as 2/3 of both houses vote yes, we want this amendment, then there's the next step. It goes back to the states to be ratified, or I think there's another word they call it. It's ratified or something. Anyway, means the same thing essentially. Or if 2/3 of the states send in a petition saying we want this amendment, then they have to take that up as well. So there's two ways it can either originate in the states or it can originate in the houses of Congress and Senate. So and that, let's see, it does limit that no amendment be made prior to the year 1808 shall in any manner affect the first and fourth clauses in the 9th section of the first article, and that no state without its consent shall be deprived of its equal suffrage in the Senate. So basically, it was making sure that no amendment could change certain things in Article 1, which change the format of the legislative branch. And that would have been at least 100 and something years, 1808 from, yeah. Was that 100 years? When was this signed? I'm getting my dates mixed up again, aren't I? Me and dates. We don't do dates very well. I can tell you what happened, but not the exact date. Let's see. Oh, it doesn't even say it there. Huh. Anyway. It doesn't let you change it, is what it's saying, for several years. And I think that was to protect undue influence of certain things and people within the House and the Senate from making changes to this that they needed to be governed by. All right, so that was Article 5. Now, Article 6. This one I had looked up as well. So this one is really talking about the authority of the United States and within the states and everything being subject to the supreme law of the land and the judges in every state shall be bound thereby. Anything in the Constitution or laws of any state to the contrary notwithstanding. So basically, your state laws can't go against the federal law. Federal law goes above, is the supreme law of the land, and that is kind of what that's saying, and the judges and everything. And then it also sets up the oath of office to support the Constitution, and no religious test shall ever be required as a qualification to any office or public trust under the United States. So that is in our Constitution, that you cannot be held to any type of religious test to become part of the government, to be elected to an office, to take that oath of affirmation. Okay, and then Article 7 is really just outlining how the ratification of the conventions of 9 states shall be sufficient for the establishment of this Constitution between the states, so ratifying the same. So there is more, a little bit thereafter, where it says who signed it, but essentially Article 7 is just saying, this is what we're proposing, but take it back to your state legislators and have them approve it. And as long as 9 out of the 13 approve it, this shall be considered the law of the land, and we are now the United States of America, basically. So it does say at the bottom, G. Washington, Presid, I don't know what the truncated, the T there is, and deputy from Virginia. I don't know if that was president or presiding, but if you can see at the bottom, it says Presid and then a one after it, or T after it. I think it's a T. I don't know if that means presiding or president and deputy from Virginia. He wouldn't have been president yet because this wasn't ratified at that point. And then the next page, it just has the states, who the representative was, who signed it, etc. So 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Why are there only 12? Huh. And then that was attested by William Jackson, the secretary. So you can see that the Constitution itself is very broad in what it sets up and what it doesn't cover, but it does have the amendment process, which is clearly defined on how it is done, how to go about it. It has spent the majority of its content on setting up the branches, and of that, the legislative was the beefiest number of pages, and I don't know if articles necessarily, but the most amount of sections and such. Sections, not articles. It's fascinating. There's so much more we could learn about the Constitution, and there's literally people who dedicate their entire lives to studying it, the supporting writings of these people who signed onto this whole list of names, all of their correspondence, published articles, things like that we have historical records. So constitutional scholars are probably, if any one of them ever watches one of these, they're probably laughing because it's just super, super basic and intro. But I definitely hope that it has at least given some food for thought. And yeah, check out my other videos on the Constitution and the amendments. Let me know what you think. As always, thank you for being here. Take care of yourself and be kind.